Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar series, A Future by Design. Today, I am excited to have with me Glen Carlson, and we're talking about influence and impact. So Glen is an award-winning entrepreneur and co-founder of Dent. Dent is a multi-award-winning business and leadership development company with structured training programs facilitated by successful business speakers and mentors. Glen and his team are best known for helping business owners develop an unfair advantage in their industry by effectively creating what he calls a personal monopoly. Dent believes there's never been a better time to build a thriving business and a respected personal brand doing something that you love. Global company, so About Dent is a global company with a team of 50 across 12 different time zones, 9th fastest growing company in 2014. 3,500 businesses have completed Dent's flagship 12-month program, Key Person of Influence, and have produced over 500 business authors. Welcome, Glen.
Oh, I'm excited. Thank you. Thanks very much for having me, Lisa.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm really excited about this conversation. And for most of those joining us today will know that Singularity You, our mission is to educate, empower, and inspire leaders to use exponential technology to solve the world's biggest challenges. And you're empowering them. So welcome. We're excited to be partnering with you.
Oh, really glad to be here. And I think kind of kindred spirits in so many different areas. You've started with why I probably should too. We called the company Dent based on it was Steve Jobs when he returned to Apple, where at the time Apple was obviously in a lot of trouble and they were working on printer cables and printers and fax machines, and just they had like 180 different kind of product lines. And Jobs argued that they should throw all of that out and just focus on the things that were going to make a real impact. And he said, if we're not going to be here to make a dent in the universe, why bother? And that idea really resonated with my business partner and I. You know, we'd spent our 20s trying to work out how to build a successful business, which we had done. It was profitable. We had good revenue. We'd expanded internationally, etc. And yet there was this kind of an existential void, if you like. Viktor Frankl would say the existential vacuum. There was something missing. And I think, I know it was this idea of being up to something more, being up to something beyond just the idea of career, just beyond the idea of a great product or service, and certainly beyond the idea of just making money. And so, you know, it's always very easy to consolidate a very long roller coaster of a journey, but essentially what it's come down to is the idea that our mission is to produce key people of influence that stand out, that scale up so they can make that impact, so they can make that dent in the universe. And I think, you know, everything Singularity You is about and everything we're about is about exponential. You guys are very much about the technology. And I guess our big focus is on how to help the founder, help the leader tap into what is the part of them that can be exponential. What is the part of their reputation that can transcend their career, their products, their services, you know, and the floor, that the elevator button to take them to the floor that they go to. Like, we have the ability to be much more than that, and accelerated by media, technology, etc. So yeah, super pumped, because I think where these two worlds collide is the nexus that is going to change the world for good.
Absolutely. And I think we both talk a lot about mindset and then technology and impact. And even just looking at the industry now, if you go back 20, 30 years, we didn't have social media. And so the dent that people can make now is so significant. I love to sort of have a look at that of, you know, what is it really now in 2020 that people are doing to align with purpose? And you say, you know, the transition of wanting to do something meaningful. Do you see that there's a shift in the industry now and more people are wanting to stand for what they believe in?
In terms of a number, yes, absolutely. I mean, the population is expanding. More people are on the internet than ever before, etc. So, absolutely. Uh, in terms of a percentage, I'm not sure because I mean, I would love to just adopt the utopian perspective that there's this quickening and there's this expansion of consciousness, and more and more people are into kind of the kumbaya and to making a dent in the universe. I'm just not sure that's actually true in practicality. It certainly feels true in my echo chamber. And I mean, you're in a similar echo chamber. You're surrounded by 3 or 4 layers of awesome people talking about awesome things and doing awesome things. But when I think about kind of expanding out and looking at the whole world, I mean, we attract lots and lots and lots of people. So, like Singularity University, we can't work with everybody. We have to have a very sort of strict selection criteria, but we do cast a wide net. And honestly, the mindset of a lot of people is still just very much put my head in the sand, play it safe. I don't want to get uncomfortable. I don't want to put myself out there. I really, really care about what people think about me. And so I don't want to step out of the kind of the construct that they have of what my identity needs to be part of the tribe. Like, that's still, in my experience, pervasive. It's still a very small percentage of people that I guess are willing to get out of that comfort zone and to truly lead. So while I think there are more and more leaders as a percentage of the whole, I'm not sure. I hope so. That would be great. But I think it's wise to consider the echo chamber and the kind of the ponds that each of us are in. But I guess my mission is to sort of expand the edges of that as much as I can, and to potentially convert some people that we're going to kind of play it safe and decide, you know what, kicking the door off the hinges sounds like a bit more fun.
Yeah. And I think you touched on as well, if you actually understand where we're at now, there's a lot of people that haven't been on the internet. And it's about 40% of the population today still don't have internet access. And so if you think about what's going to happen in the next 5 years, we're going to have an extra 3 or 4 billion people come online, and at the fastest internet speeds we've ever had. I know we talk a lot about technology, and it's almost like currently we have on the planet 50 billion devices and 1 trillion sensors. And in the next 10 years, we're going to have 500 billion devices and 100 trillion sensors, and almost this future of perfect knowledge. And so that's not too far away. If you actually look at now, how can people jump out and how can people stand out from the crowd and actually stand up now to really make a difference?
Yeah. And look, so I think it's really easy to get caught up in all of the new technology. I think the internet is a technology. It has allowed us to do more with less. But I'm not sure, and I could totally be wrong. I'm not sure it's fundamentally changes the nature of people simply because it exists. I think it simply amplifies who they already were. Like, I can't sing. If I step up to a microphone, which is a piece of technology that has the capability to amplify me, just because that technology exists, just because I choose to step up to that, doesn't automatically mean that the end product is going to be good for the world. Trust me. I've been to karaoke a few times. Me stepping up to the microphone is not good for the world. It's fun for me, but not necessarily good for the world. And I feel like the internet and social media and all of these platforms are exactly the same. And it's important to separate, I believe, the singer and the microphone. If we don't separate the singer and the microphone and recommend both are important for the net result, if we just focus on the microphone, you end up amplifying a lot of noise. And of course, the key to being a key person of influence is to be the signal, not the noise. Key people of influence's message has been amplified pre-technology. I mean, you can look at Martin Luther King standing in front of 500,000 people. I mean, without anything close to the kind of technology or the kind of leverage or the ability for a message to spread, and yet was still able to change the world. So these influences have already existed, always existed, and their impact has always been felt. It's the nature of humanity, I suppose, that there's a few of us that have that. I think the difference now is the barriers are lower, and B, the impact is so much faster. I mean, I just posted a video today, and instantly, it's available in Sydney, it's available in New York, it's available in Japan at the exact same second. And it's entirely likely, barring some kind of cataclysmic event, that my great grandchildren will be able to tune into that, and there will be no loss in fidelity. So I have the ability to publish a piece of material that is spaceless, timeless, and suffers no wear and tear. I mean, that is just mental. It's so mental that it's very easy to get intoxicated by the promise of the technology, which is why I like coming back to the singer and the microphone, and to kind of remember to step back and say, well, first of all, what song am I going to sing? And second of all, have I put in the effort to become a good singer? So I actually have something worthy of being amplified. So I think, when it comes to becoming a key person of influence, it's important to not lose the forest from the trees, and to remember, as an individual leader, we are the singer. And as new technology and new innovations occur, yeah, that will potentially help that message spread. But the question is, what is that message? And so that's where we start.
I was about to ask exactly that question. How do people choose what they want to amplify? And, for me, I love singing, but it's never a good idea online. So should I not sing on TikTok? Is that what you're saying? How do I choose?
So I think, and look, I think, you, Singularity University, Peter Diamandis, like the whole thing have got it right, which is, you should focus on the message that solves and has the promise of solving, the more problems for more people. So I grew up sailing around the world on a yacht with my parents. My dad was a shipwright in the Navy. My mum was a hairdresser. So we didn't have an entrepreneurial background. My dad was a little bit different, I suppose, to most people. He asked my Nana, my mum's mum, he said, look, life's good, work's good. He was in the Navy building boats. Family's good. I was about 3 at the time. Relationship's good. All that's there, but something's missing. She was a wise old git, as those from past generations tend to be, and she's passed now. But she said, if you were to go and imagine the end of your life, so right now you're in the prime of your life, but imagine the end of your life, and you're surrounded by family and friends and people that you love, and it's a nice way to go. But when you look back, there's still one big regret. What would that regret be? And the story goes, quick as a flash, Dad just said, I would regret not sailing around the world. It had been a silent dream of his for a long time. And my Nana just looked at him and said, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And to my dad, being a Navy boy, what have you, that was a kind of the red flag to the bull, the Matador's red cape type deal. And so within 3 years, Dad had resigned from the Navy, built our boat, and we sailed around the world for 7 years. And so that's a long way of getting around to the fact that when we got back, I'd been to 46 different countries. I was now at school. I'd got a job at McDonald's, which I hated. And Dad said to me, the only way money is ever going to flow to you is if you're fixing something for someone. And now Dad's paradigm was literally fixing something, because he was a boat builder. He was a maker. In the physical world. I'm flipping burgers at McDonald's, which is clearly a pretty small problem to solve. And so we were still living on a yacht at the Mooloolaba Marina up in Queensland, and every week they hold a race. And so Dad suggested that I go around and see if any of the skippers had any problems that I could solve. And it turns out many of them did. They had gunk built up on the bottom of their hulls, and they said, we'll pay you $1 a foot if you jump in and scrub it clean. So I ended up making more money in 3 days than I would make in the next 3 months working at McDonald's. And I guess that's where the entrepreneurial light bulb went on for the first time, going, wow. And that message really stuck with me, this idea of you'll only make money if you're fixing something for someone. That's expanded to you'll only make money if you're solving problems for someone, just because it can be a little less tangible than the fix. But I mean, the spirit of intent, I think, is the same. And I guess I've developed it in the sense that you'll only have money, time, and a sense of meaning and fulfillment if you're solving meaningful problems for people, where the mere act of solving that problem lights you up. And if you can get that equation where how can I fix something for someone where in the doing of that, it makes me just feel good. Like I geek out on it. I want to learn about it. I want to understand it. Like that's this thing that I want to push into the world. That's where you start. And in our methodology around influence, that's about pitch and the beginnings of your pitch, your message. We say you get what you pitch for, and you're always pitching. It's this idea that your pitch should be a fundamental expression of the stuff that you geek out about the most. Most people think of pitching as like a 30-second elevator pitch for something. It's like, no. Like if you think of, because I think a lot of your viewers would have been down Peter Diamandis's rabbit hole, like he's always pitching, whether it's on his podcast or in his books, or whether he's just communicating at the conferences or whatever. Even if he's not selling one of his businesses or his products, or if he's not raising capital, but he's just talking to the philosophy of the future and to the philosophy of, even contemplating the concept of impacting 1 billion people, that's a pitch. Getting people to buy into an idea is a pitch, and the best ideas to get people to buy into are the ones that you're most interested in. So that's probably a long way around to come back to that spirit of where to start, but you got to be solving a problem for someone.
I love that. A couple of things. I'm taking notes as we're having the conversation, and I love that you had a good early lesson in life from McDonald's, and because I also worked at McDonald's, my first job, and when you went out onto the counter to serve somebody, there was this little plaque, and it was just before you entered the counter area, and it said, "Smile, you're about to go on stage." And I was so scared of people at the time, and they really teach you the language of, oh, how can I help you? And that first line, that how can I help you, I think it stuck with me for so long that I was just always, how can I help? How can I help? Even, throughout anytime anyone shares a challenge with me, I'm like, how can I help? And I love that you've tied that into how we can expand that impact.
We had a very different experience of McDonald's then. Yes, I did not get that lesson from it, but I'm glad we both got lessons from it.
Yes, definitely. And then you mentioned Peter Diamandis, and one of his favorite quotes that I love is that if the new definition of the billionaire, and that's to solve a problem, someone who can solve a problem for 1 billion people.
100%. And look, I love that. I love that. And I think the better place to start is how could you solve a problem for one person that you deeply care about and that is deeply meaningful for them, right? I think, and then once you've got that, 2 people and 3 people, and then how do we then layer technology? How do we layer media? How do we layer the Internet of Things and, on it goes? How do we leverage biology? How do we leverage DNA? How do we leverage space? And how do we leverage that to that core piece. Everything about Singularity University, everything about Peter Diamandis is massive. It's bold, it's sexy, it's seductive, and I think it has the ability, if not approached with wisdom, to create deep anxiety, right? Because I think it was Roosevelt that said comparison is the thief of joy. And if we're constantly striving and looking at people that are impacting 1 billion people and wanting to impact 1 billion people, but we're not prepared to come back and start by impacting one, then I think it creates a huge chasm. Whereas if you can feel let me talk about me. When I'm trying to make sure that I'm navigating my life, I'm trying to make sure that I can have a conversation with one person. At the end of that conversation, I can get hit by a bus and have died well. I can have died giving my gifts, feeling fulfilled just in the service of that one person. And I think to miss that step is to be abducted by a very seductive idea. I know people, I mean, you and I am a part of, an organization that, connects us to the billionaires and to the people that are in fact impacting 1 billion people. I've met quite a few of them that are very unhappy.
Well, we're talking about the
deep,
science of achievement and then the art of fulfillment.
right? And so I like always coming back to first principles that scale must come after value, not before. The moment we start focusing on scale before we focus on value, I think we end up with a runaway train of technology for technology's sake, for scale's sake, and economic bubbles for economic bubbles' sake. And I think, as opposed to coming back to what is valuable, what is meaningful, what is real for me in my life, whether I impact 1 billion people or I impact just enough people to support my family, if I can do that and die well, that's the starting point. Then how do we scale? And the irony is, I believe, that the people that end up impacting 1 billion people start there. They start by geeking out on something that they absolutely are fixated and obsessed about. And as a result of that obsession, they attract the people and the resources that have the expertise in these other areas that maybe they don't understand. And then all of a sudden they can expand out, but the seed has been planted in, I guess, the appropriate soil. So it might be a bit kumbaya, but I see it a lot. I mean, we've worked with over 3,500 business owners. I see people when they start working with us where they are clearly in a business model or a design of a business that is there to make money, that has evolved by accident. It's just kind of been a random series of life events that have kind of led them to doing what they're doing. There hasn't been a lot of design, intentionality, or reverse engineering to any of it. And as a result, there is this existential vacuum. There is this calling where, and it's a sense of frustrated ambition. There's this sense of, I'm here to do more, be more, create more, give more, serve more. But I'm frustrated. And often the frustration is, in what I see at least, caused by some of the limitations of just reacting to life. And you end up in this kind of gilded cage that requires a real decision sometimes to kick that door off its hinges and get back into the flow that kind of you're here to do. And I guess that's the spirit of Dent. That's the spirit of what we try to cultivate and then wrap a very commercial strategy and model around it.
It's very interesting that you're working with so many businesses as well. So individually, absolutely solving a problem that's near and dear to your heart. It's really identifying what the strengths of the business are and how you can pivot. And I really believe in the next 10 years that people are going to be speaking with their wallet a lot more. And so they'll know when businesses are out there and it's just for money, or when it's for purpose. And
I think they already are. I mean, I think that jury's out. I
want to question that one.
All right.
So at the moment, the oil and gas industry is the dirtiest in the world.
Sure.
The second is fashion. And the amount of clothes that go into landfill every year, and micro nanoplastics and whatnot in clothing and the materials that we use. And so we're actually take a step back. If you think of the Earth as a spaceship, Buckminster Fuller introduced the concept of spaceship Earth, and we're all on this spaceship and we're traveling through the universe, and we have on board everything that we need to get us through this journey. And then you have a look at what we've done. We've only had plastics on the planet for the last 50 odd years that's been commercially produced, yet we've created so much destruction with plastic. And so companies, it was actually Adidas or Adidas for our international listeners, is they've come up with a statement. They were making 11 million pairs of shoes from great ocean plastic a few years ago. And then last year they decided to create a Futurecraft loop shoe, which is a shoe made entirely of the one material. Because when you break down and recycle it, one of the things is human labor to be able to take out the shoelaces and all of the different materials. And so now by 3D printing this shoe in one material, when you're finished with it, you can send it back and you can break it down and you can do it again. And so this is why I question, because some of the largest organizations in the world are still not doing the best thing for the planet and solving these world's biggest problems. And then similar, we have world hunger, but we don't have a hunger problem. We have a distribution problem because we have enough food, but we waste 30% every year. And so this is where I get caught between, the world has these big problems. So how do we zoom out and look at the industry and look at the challenges and the world challenges? And then how do we zoom in and understand in our own business or lives if we're in a scarcity or an abundance mindset? And then how we can shift and shape to solve those local problems for people here that then could potentially scale, but just understanding that sort of the big picture as well. Yeah.
So first of all, I don't disagree, of course, that there are world problems. The premise that I heard was that people don't currently vote with their wallet. But when I look at food and distribution, I look at just in Australia at Zambrero, one of the more successful franchises that is absolutely for people and planet and the effective redistribution of food and locally sourced and etc. And they exploded onto the scene from that perspective. Chipotle in America, sort of similar thing. If you look at Patagonia from a fashion perspective, again, I mean, they have some of the most rigorous internal mechanisms for trying to be as sustainable as humanly possible at all levels of the organization. I mean, they're a very famous B Corp, etc., which is, again, one of the most rigorous kind of standards to be able to maintain. And I think they're one of the top 5 most profitable fashion brands on the planet. And so I think, and look, I'm not necessarily the expert in this particular field, but I've certainly seen what appears to be very valid example after example after example, that purpose-driven, mission-driven businesses that have a bias towards sustainability and a standard around not being willing to profit at the expense of people and planet tend to do very, very well. Now, they because they are attracting, I think, a very conscious consumer, and I think they are the early businesses, the early signals for there's definitely a market that do very much care. And I think, I mean, just based on the growth of some of these conscious capitalism type businesses, Thank You Water is another good example in Australia. I think, the light is on and burning brightly for the masses. To go to oil and gas, you've got issues, just very real issues with, having invested trillions of dollars into an install base. Like, I don't get me wrong, I'm in no way supporting the oil and gas practices. No. However, when you look at why is that industry changing very, very slow compared to other industries, I just look at the capital investment and I look at the economic models around it, and I think it makes sense. And so do I think it's going to change? I think they think it's going to change. Could it change a hell of a lot faster if they just decided to do whatever it takes? I absolutely do. But the good news is that I think a lot of the exponential technologies that SU talks about, Demandus talks about, and that we talk about, the barriers to entry are very low. right? And so I think the Industrial Revolution, it was basically make money out of people and planet. That was the modus operandi. And I think we are currently consuming the fruit of that tree. I think it's a very different tree these days. You know, some of the biggest companies on the planet are not approaching it from that paradigm, and that paradigm isn't baked into the P&L and the balance sheet. And so I see that there's a transition from and to. And I think the thing that's going to accelerate that is individuals having standards in terms of their consumption, for sure. But I also think it's about individuals having standards in terms of what they choose to communicate, what they choose to stand for versus what they choose to stand against. And I think, that is at its essence what leadership is. And so I'm super optimistic. I get where you're coming from, but I'm super optimistic that people are absolutely voting for their wallets, and that there is an absolute competitive advantage in taking the stand to not choose to profit from people and planet. And I think those companies are being rewarded for that decision.
Yeah, I love that we both feel like the time is now and the opportunity is now. And so if you think about those, like even let's say McDonald's, I mentioned World Hunger and we've both mentioned McDonald's, and I have to pre-frame that I don't actually know a lot of the initiatives that they're doing at the moment. However, imagine a CEO that stepped in front of the logo at McDonald's and said, we are going to do everything we can to solve world hunger in the next 10 years. Could that be a competitive advantage? And this is where I think that key person of influence, the idea and what you stand for is so important, and that you actually can stand in front of the logo of a business now, and it's individuals that are actually standing up, and then they're creating these models that can really make a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. No one is ever going to step out the front of McDonald's and do that. It's just not going to happen because that machine has been built in a particular way, and with shareholders and legacy and culture, etc. What I would love to see more is the death of McDonald's being replaced by a new innovative organization led by the Elon Musk of food, running on exponential technology, doing something incredible that provides people with the same kind of food, the same kind of dopamine kick from the food, but in a healthy way, that's more profitable, that's more impactful, and McDonald's just can't compete with them. And I think that's the world that I'm excited about. I think that's the world that you're excited about. And I think, the way Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey, right? It's the structure of kind of every Hollywood movie where the hero kind of overcomes the challenges, finds out who they are, and kind of saves the day. In each one of those stories, Joseph Campbell talks about the killing of the father. And, in Star Wars, it's literal. Like Luke Skywalker goes against Darth Vader and he finds out, Luke, I am your father. And it's like, whoa. And so it was a literal articulation of a narrative. And if you're watching or listening to this and haven't kind of gone down the Joseph Campbell hero's journey rabbit hole, just do a Google. There's some great TED Talks on it. It's very, very interesting. But I think this idea of killing the father and what killing the father represents is it represents becoming our own person. It represents stepping out of stepping out of the shadow of our past, the comfortable shadow of our past, and the dynamic of the child parent, the look after me paradigm, and stepping into true autonomy, self-reliance, etc., and essentially getting rid of the net is what it means to become fully human. And so to me, what it means to lead, what it means to choose to expand one's ability to influence and to try and make a dent in the universe and to move beyond, it's very comfortable consuming oil. It's very comfortable consuming gas. It's very comfortable sucking down sugar, right? To fast intermittently, to transition from being a sugar burner to being fat adapted is not a comfortable metamorphosis. But again, like we sort of said at the start of this, the vast majority of people want to stay comfortable. In the Matrix, he's like, I just want to eat the steak and be a movie star. I don't want to deal with reality. Like plug me back in. I still think that's the majority. And so what do we do at an individual level to change the direction of the ship? And my answer is just to lead, right? To lead yourself, to lead your family first, possibly to lead your business third. So first yourself, then your family, then your business. Then you've got a team that you can influence and customers and clients. And all of a sudden your spheres of influence begin to radiate out. I think it was Jordan Peterson that said, make your own bed first. So many people running around preaching what the world should be, but they can't get their own shit in order, if that makes sense. And I think that really resonates with me in terms of what real leadership means. And we can talk, as much as we want about the Internet of Things and a trillion devices. And I can talk about, publishing books and building a personal brand, right? And all these mechanisms for unbelievable leverage. But if we can't come back to the first principle to truly inspect, well, what the hell am I leveraging? Like, who is this me? Simon Sinek says, start with why. Who is this me? What is this center point that what is this singularity that I'm going to then expand from? Without that, I think it's just a recipe for more of the same with far more leverage, which is bad.
I love that we've gone exactly there, because we've been talking a lot lately about unleashing your inner superhero, and then this concept of superpowers.
You were telling me this in the green room, and I'm like, you're going to ask me what my superhero powers are.
I definitely am. And I love, for everyone out there, I'd encourage you as well to think about technology as superpowers. And so if you actually think back to your favorite superheroes, fairy tales, sci-fi stories from when you were young, and what are those characteristics and what technologies, what did they have that we may have access to now? So you've got X-ray vision, we could fly, all sorts of different superpowers. And so with technology and exponential technology, we are able to amplify, as you say, that impact. And so my inner superhero, I'm really inspired by Astro Girl. I know it's Astro Boy, but we've got the girl version because I'd really love to fly. Iron Man, because of the perfect vision of the world, and I want Jarvis, my own personal AI that can tell me anything, anytime. And a Care Bear, because I totally want a Care Bear stare sometimes in the world and get all of our combined energy to be able to help and focus on a problem. So with that, now I'm going to ask you, we started talking about it.
Better a Care Bear stare than a bitchy resting face, I think.
Definitely. Excellent. I'm recruiting more Care Bears.
Yeah.
What are your top three superheroes that you're inspired from when you were young?
So fortunately, I had a few minutes to think about this in the green room. So this isn't off the cuff. I had to have a think about it. But I thought, I would say Batman because of his toys. I love toys. I love acquiring gadgets and new things and gizmos. I also love developing my skill set in different areas. So, Batman has got a whole bunch of skills and a whole bunch of toys that allow him to do more than normal. So, I've sailed around the world for 7 years. I can sail a yacht. I can free dive. I can scuba dive. I can skydive. I can survive in the wilderness. I can camp overnight up in the alpine territory. I like acquiring skills, and each of those skill sets has its own rabbit hole of toys and technology. So my garage is equipped, shall we say. So definitely.
You've got your Batcave?
Definitely Batman. I've got my Batcave. Fortunately, I don't have the damaged past of poor Batman. So Batman would be one. Two would be Han Solo from Star Wars, because he gets to fly the Millennium Falcon, obviously, and that's all that needs to be really said about that. And third, I would say Neo from The Matrix. And I think that the reason I like Neo, the reason I like all of those characters is they're all human, right? They're not actually mutants. They're all just humans doing the best they can with what they've got. And the thing I kind of really like about Neo, though, is that he transcends what we consider to be possible in this reality without the need for technology, without the need for devices. I didn't rely on the Internet of Things. In fact, he had to step away from all of that to fully tap into his power. And he realized that at that depth, he was more powerful than all of the things that man could make on the outside. And so those were the three that I thought about. It was a friend of mine and a mentor, his name's John DiMartini. He taught me that, bit of a guru guy. He said, nothing from the senses will ever satisfy the soul. And I found that to be true. You know, I've made money in my life. I've built businesses. I've won awards. All the external trappings, and not a single one of them led to any kind of long-term happiness or satisfaction or fulfillment. It was very, very fleeting. And the only stuff that's been lasting has been the human stuff. It's been my family. It's been my daughter. It's been my relationships. It's been, how I'm able to connect with the world in a heart-to-heart way, and a focus on how do I solve a meaningful goddamn problem. And then, from there, how do I then get that out to more people? So I guess the theme seems to be, bringing it back to the first principles of what's human, what's real, what's meaningful, and how can you use that to solve a real problem, then technology.
The most super cool thing about that is that you're already embracing those superpowers of those superheroes in your world and what you do today.
Yeah.
That's totally best answer I've had in a long time. And
I am Batman.
I want to see an Instagram or Facebook series around
little Batman suit.
All those gadgets now. Each time that you go skydiving or something, I want to see #Batman.
To be honest, I've toned down the skydiving since my daughter came around. I now like the illusion of danger, but not actual danger. My second solo skydive. So I'd kind of been in free fall maybe 6 or 7 times before that, in tandem, strapped to someone learning the ropes. Then there was my first one where they got halfway down holding me, then they let me go, and then I'm off. The second time where we all came out together, but I was free from the start, when they broke away and then it's on me, when I punched my chute, it twisted and I had a major chute malfunction. And so I was literally free falling in a kind of a vertical spin with my chute twisted, etc., trying to process. Now, fortunately, because I was still in the course, we'd just been doing drill after drill after drill after drill of the breakaway maneuver. But after that, I kind of realized, oh shit, like this can legit kill you. So now I like to stick to things that have the illusion of danger, but no real actual danger, like mountain biking or scuba diving or something like that.
You're almost touching now on longevity, and so we are living longer, and so
the opposite.
I'm going to ask you, so in 20 years' time, do you think that there would be a potential that you could actually have a skydiving accident like that? Or will we have visual recognition software on the ground and different or drones that can visually recognize if someone's in trouble and shoot a net or do something super cool to save you before anything happens? And will we look back and go, oh, remember that time that we used to take risks skydiving, or we used to drive a motor vehicle? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Of course, everything and anything are possible. And it's interesting on longevity. When I was 21, I decided I was going to live to 150. And because everyone's talking about 80, 80, 80. And I'm like, that's just a psychological programming. If I tell myself I'm having a shit day, I'm going to have a shit day. If I tell myself I'm rocking, I'm going to have a great day, I'm going to have a great day. If I tell myself I'm going to live to 80, I'm going to get within spitting distance, a standard deviation of 80. If I could pitch myself to 150, if I could get within a standard deviation of that, awesome. So I was doing that when I was 21. And I think that's important because you can have all the technology, but if you're telling yourself you're going to die, just because of the social hypnosis of the world. I'm big on how is the world hypnotizing me. Mark Twain said, whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. I try and do that a lot. And that was one of the sides of the majority. The majority talk about, oh, I'm 40, I'm in midlife. It's like, fuck off. I'm not sure if I can say that. I'm not. I'm a third of the way in. I'm not even a third of the way in. So anyway, so that was that idea. Yeah, look, oh man, like I think there's a problem in removing risk from everything. My daughter's 1.5, and she's a firecracker. And both Sarah and I let her do stuff. Like we let her run around, we let her fall over, we let her like cook, we let her use knives and forks. She's 1.5. She shouldn't be using a sharp knife. She has a sharp knife. She's never cut herself with a sharp knife. Not a super sharp knife, but you get the idea. And she's awesome. And people meet her and are like, wow, like this is she's cool, she's interactive, she's like a little human, but at 1.5, which seems to be, anyway, every father sees magic in their own kids, right? But I look for opportunities. Sarah looks for opportunities to expose her to risk that's appropriate for a 1.5-year-old, whereas we see other people with kids the same age literally trying to, maybe not literally, but like metaphorically would be more effective, wrapping them in cotton wool and bubble wrap and, etc. And like autonomous cars, yes. And, nets to stop you dying from skydiving, yes. But what happens when a human no longer has to accept risk? I don't think that's utopia. I think that's hell. I really do, because let me ask you a question. Think of a time where you experienced a victory of some sort, a victory, a success, or an achievement of some kind. It could be last week, last month, last decade. I don't care when, but can you get that in your mind?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me also ask you, because I've asked this of tens of thousands of people now, and of course every single person, when they think of that, has a different victory, because a victory is a very personal thing. But if I ask you, to achieve that victory, was some degree of discomfort required?
Absolutely.
Right? I have not had a single person that's understood the question ever respond and say that they achieved victory without discomfort. Discomfort by its nature is risk, because it's pushing us out of our comfort zone. It's moving us into the unknown, whether it's social risk, that maybe our peer group are not going to like what we do, which is biologically, from our ancient heritage, the worst. Getting kicked out of the tribe is a death sentence. Nothing worse than that. It could be a personal brand risk. It could be a business risk. It could be a financial risk. It could be an emotional risk. There are all these risks that we take, but no one ever has experienced a victory, a true victory, a success, or an achievement that makes them feel proud without that mechanism. And so, to create a world without risk, to use technology to try and add more comfort and more safety, I don't think that's what we're here for. I don't think that's what makes the human spirit come alive. I think challenge, adversity, risk, I think these are things that bring joy, humility, and gratitude to the human soul. And so I'm excited about the future. Don't get me wrong, I'm pro technology. But I do get jumpy when people get infatuated with the outcome of it reducing or ultimately even removing the things that make us human. And, I think we should have a goal for staying human as absolutely long as possible.
I've got these two visions right now. I'm picturing the Matrix, where we're just plugged in and we're not actually, we're in a simulation. And so virtual reality, we've gone too far that way. And then the other one, I'm picturing Han Solo, and he's flying his spaceship and he's out in the universe and having a great time. So,
Well, I mean, the odds are we are in a simulation, and you and I are actually our great, 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 great grandchildren that wanted to come in and do a bit of a history lesson. And because of social media and the fact that technology, for the first time in human history, has been able to get an accurate blueprint of you and me today in like base reality, sort of 2020, that this is as early back as our future generations can come in the simulation with any degree of fidelity or definition, because it's all been captured digitally. So I think that's entirely likely. I think it's actually useful to think of that. If this was just a game, if this was just a simulation and I could actually do anything and it's not real and it's just literally a fabrication, and what I think are the laws of reality aren't the laws of reality, what I think is possible isn't real, what I think my limitations aren't really my limitations, they're just a construct, and all I've got to do is decide that I can bend the spoon. I mean, it's an interesting thought experiment. It's weird, but it's an interesting thought experiment in terms of when faced with a decision, because this comes back to the victory, right? If discomfort precedes victory every single time, then it makes sense to have a bias towards discomfort. That doesn't mean being uncomfortable all the time, but it means in those moments of decision, in those moments where we've got to make a decision that's important, if you zoom right into that, two paths diverge in a wood, right? You've got the easy option and you've got the uncomfortable option, which is going to push us out of our comfort zone and potentially expose us to risk. Whereas the other one, we can kind of coast and abdicate responsibility and deal with the problem later and kind of hope we get away with it. And I feel that it's in those moments of decision that if we can pretend this is a simulation, if we can sort of disassociate the monkey brain, fight, flight, freeze type thinking in that moment and zoom out, like you say, to spaceship Earth, where we're just a piece of that and it's kind of no big deal. We're just a little speck on a pale blue dot. What decision would we make from that space? What decision would we make from that standard? And anyone that I like to break bread with, anyone that you like to break bread with, and I think anybody listening or watching this that they like to break bread with, would always choose the uncomfortable option. And yet that's not what most people do. And I think it's an important reflection on decision making.
it comes back to mindset as well, as actually in those times when things are challenging. And for a lot of people at the moment, things are challenging. So it's almost the question of how do you actually arm yourself with the tools, the resources, the strategies to be able to better deal with them when they do come along. And so, increasing the quality of your problems, you're always going to have challenges.
Yeah, and look, I've also jumped on the bandwagon around bringing people to the attention that, this is a challenging time with COVID. But, the previous 10 years, we had people going out of business all the time, right? Just because that's the nature of markets. We also had businesses that were growing really fast and growing broke a lot of the time. Like, growth sucks cash. Growth can create more problems than stagnation. And they don't always lead to successful outcomes. They often lead to, total failure in business. And so, yeah, people are struggling now, and are more people struggling now? Yeah, but it's just different. It's, the market has found a way to correct itself every 7 to 10 years. That the entrepreneur journey is predictable. COVID, I mean, no one expected, expected a physical shutdown. But if you go back, there's this great chart that I've got which shows the last 110 years in Australia of the ASX, from the Boer War to World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the recession we had to have, the Twin Towers, etc., and now COVID. And it's on a logarithmic scale. And the line just goes, and the market just bounces up on this line. And, while it is weird now, don't get me wrong, it's weird and it's tough, but it's not tougher than World War II. It's not tougher than two cities going up in a flash of white light. It's not tougher than World War One. It's not tougher than hundreds of thousands of young boys being put through a meat grinder in the Battle of Somme. Like, so I think in that and I like going there. I like kind of putting myself in that context to go, because I lost my business in 2009. Like, we built our business from 2001 up. GFC came along. We were an event promotion company. We were done, zero. We went from millions with a team of 15 to zero in the space of about 3 months. I know what it's like to go from that to zero. And I think of how shit I felt in that time. And then I think of the boys at the bottom of Gallipoli looking up at the hill, and I go, I don't have problems.
Contrast is
right? All I have is opportunity. There's this toxic paradigm of the illusion of limited resources, where, despite being in the wealthiest, most prosperous, healthiest, most connected time in human history, we still concoct this idea that we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, we're not ready yet, we don't have enough experience, etc., etc. And we come up with this intellectual fallacy that is simply a high-tech rationalization that is often fueled by degrees and, letters after our name and, business cards with prestigious roles on them. But really, we've played it safe, and really we're acting as though we're constrained. And the amount of times I hear people talk about this catch-22 of, if I had more of this and more of that, then but those come together, so I'm stuck. It's like, the catch-22 appears to be true. The thing I love most about Peter Diamandis is that he is the ultimate entrepreneur. His story about Stone Soup, where literally a couple of soldiers starting with nothing but a rusty bowl with some stones and some water start singing and dancing and having a good time, and all of a sudden, the people come out of the village and say, that had been hiding previously because they were scared of the soldiers, say, hey, what are you doing? You're having a great time. It's like, come and join us. Let's tell some jokes, etc. What are you doing? I'm making stone soup. What's stone soup? It's going to be delicious. What can I help? What can I bring up? Some carrots would be good. Okay, I'll throw in some carrots. Another person comes. What would be good? Some rabbit. I'll throw in some rabbit and some potatoes. And all of a sudden, because they've brought this lightness and this kind of energy and this attractive nature, and people have shown up and they've just contributed the little bit that they needed to contribute to, by the end of the night, everyone's enjoying this beautiful, rich stone soup. And yet it started with nothing. Nothing. There were none of those ingredients there other than a vision of what it could be. And I think that's key. And I think in the times that we're in, any kind of internal limitation, fear, doubt, or insecurity needs to be recognized for what it is, which is a lie.
I'm going to have to start wrapping us up. I'm so intrigued. One of the things that I've learned the most from you is that, what lasts is you and your reputation. And so this conversation, it's so human. And even Stone Soup, it's about human. It's how we show up every day. And, that's what you do. That's what you share. You've actually unleashed your superheroes in that space.
Should have said Wolverine.
I'll let you add another. How can our people, our listeners, our audience learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so our pitch is pretty simple. We've surveyed over 64,000 different businesses through our online tools and what have you. And the stages of growth are very simple. It starts off, you build value. Then you need to build influence around that value. It's essentially, how do you get known, liked, and trusted at scale? How do you use the thing that you love doing the most? How do you leverage media? How do you leverage technology? And then from there, it's how do we develop the assets of scale around that? So all of that is baked into the Key Person of Influence book. It's baked into our workshops, our programs, our accelerator programs. Like you guys, we only work with people that are already successful but are looking for a little bit of an edge. And so, I think, Lisa, we're setting up a link for everyone to get the book.
Yep. So if anyone's on Facebook Live now, say yes in the comments or email us at info@singularityaustralia.com, or in our online learning community as well. Just comment in the comments on this webinar yes, and the team will send you through a copy of the book.
And if you'd like to tune in to, I run a weekly session where I just speak with a small group of business owners that are exploring what it would look like to put their business through an accelerator to build out these elements. So we talk about pitching, publishing thought leadership, developing digital scalable products, raising your profile online in the media, winning awards, and establishing partnerships with key brands in your industry, which is exactly what we're doing here. If you'd like to tune into that, if you're watching this anytime, just go to discoverkpi.com or kpiworkshop.com. So kpiworkshop.com, and that'll send you down our rabbit hole, or you can just go to our main website, dent.global, or you can just Google my name, Glen Carlson, and would love to connect.
So amazing. Thank you so much. And for anyone watching that's interested in some of the technologies as well that we're talking about and leadership, we have an upcoming executive program. We have an online version next week. And then for those of you watching later, check out the website singularityaustralia.com and see our next live in-person executive program. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, Glen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as well and for joining this conversation to make the world a better place and really create that future by design. Thanks, Glen.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having me.